Thank you for joining XROM, which is India's first AR/VR focused podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Chaitanya Ravi, who's the founder of Sentio VR, which is a collaborative SaaS platform for the architecture, engineering, and construction industry. So, Ravi, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. Why don't we start with a small, brief introduction? And what was it that got you interested in virtual reality?
Absolutely, Eddie. Thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast. Really excited to be here. I'm Chaitanya Ravi. I originally graduated from IIT Kharagpur in instrumentation engineering, and of all places, started my career in Santiago, Chile, working in the mining and finance industries. So I was always associated with technology, but in different verticals. And I made a pivot to the world of startups, looking for different ideas. Where one of my side projects led to trying the early versions of VR headsets like the Oculus DK2. And it totally blew my mind because I thought it was a moment that sort of made me feel this is very, very transformative. And that led me to search for ideas where this technology could solve real world problems.
You started Sentio VR, which is for the AEC industry. So maybe it'd be nice if you could start with elaborating what is Sentio VR and how are you leveraging VR over there to improve collaboration, communication amongst the AEC industry?
Sure. So I think what we learned early in VR was that the technology was very exciting, but it needed to work in tandem with the problems people really face to make meaningful outcomes. So it was a journey for us, Eddie, to reach the idea of Sentio VR and to make it so clear in terms of what we are trying to do. I think our early insight was while we were trying to do it for the real estate industry, we learned from architects working behind the scenes that they had a real challenge in communicating their ideas, their designs to end clients, while architects are trained to sort of look at a floor plan and imagine how it might look. It's very hard for people who do not have that training to understand how buildings might eventually look, and that creates a lot of errors, miscommunication, decision making going wrong. So I think that insight is what led us to say, okay, we have an understanding of VR, and we have a problem here that is genuine, real, and we can solve it. And that's what led us to build Sentio VR.
Right. So tell me, these architects, obviously, they are not vested in virtual reality. They have these blueprints, they draw the sketches and maps and their SCAD files, 3D files. Virtual reality, it's new technology. So how is there some kind of a training or something that you provide to these architects?
Right. So we've been in this for almost 5 years. I think in the last 3 years is when we have really doubled down on AEC. I think before that we were sort of figuring out what was our niche to start with. But to answer your question, of course, I think what you'll find in the world of architects, in general in any industry, is that there are early adopters who have that curiosity to go beyond, and look for solutions that are innovative. So we found our set of early adopters too, people who were figuring out VR headsets, setting things up while they were also doing architecture stuff. And those were the ones who sort of working closely with them, we realized that there was a lot of education to be done. So our early initiative was not just building the product. We wrote a lot of content and created a lot of education articles on how their existing workflows could be moved to VR. And I think that's what sort of triggered the engine of curiosity and more people coming in. And of course, now we are today at a point, I think we have gone beyond early adopters. Architecture firms in general have a good sense of what it is. There's still a long way to go, but I think that early education and like sort of solving that friction points rather than just talking about virtual reality was the key to get initial traction going.
I had like a similar kind of journey. So I got, vested in virtual reality in early 2016, and mine was more in the space of creating content. We built out our own 2016 camera rig, and we created a lot of content, and we did a couple of walkthroughs for these real estates and industries, where you put the user into the space itself. So over the years, obviously, VR itself, from live action to, graphics to augmented reality, mixed reality. Now, a lot of these tech stacks are being used in the AEC industry. Could you elaborate on how is Sentio VR, being leveraged? Maybe it'll be nice if you could give some kind of, examples on how it's helping the AEC industry.
Absolutely. So I think to start with, today Sentio VR is a global SaaS product. We have customers in more than 40 countries. Some of the world's leading architecture, engineering, construction firms are using our product. So what I think is important to understand in AEC is that it's a large industry. It's a lot of different types of users trying to do different things. So I think what we have done is narrowed down on the most critical pain points and try to solve that using new technology. For example, architects don't just do designing, they have a lot of communication to do internally. They have to agree upon design decisions, then externally with clients, other stakeholders. So the first problem that we have helped them solve is, while you're working on your 3D software, which are these old traditional tools built in 90s, early 2000s, we'll integrate with them through plugins, pull out your model to the cloud in one click, and you can put on a Quest headset, 6-digit code, and the model is in the cloud and in VR within minutes. So that's our key offering to architects. So that helps them, just come to the immersive presentation workflow within minutes without having to figure out that entire technology stack. The other use case is, once projects move beyond the architecture stage, engineers are trying to build detailed designs of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, architectural, trying to bring everything together. And that's another phase of the project where a lot of coordination is being done in VR, so that before you go to construction, you have a pretty well thought out and detailed design with every stakeholder has had their opinion, so that you're not finding surprises in construction. So those are the two use cases where Sentio is helping by bringing the models to the cloud and enabling collaboration on wireless headsets remotely and finding issues.
Lovely. Ravi, do you think you'll be able to share maybe a specific success story where Sentio VR has helped your clients?
Absolutely. I think very early days, Eddie, we had a project here in Chile where the lead architect was trying to convince the directors about the possibility of building a mall. And he had these large sort of floor plans on the table, and the directors were trying to get their heads around as to what that mall would look like. And the meeting didn't really go well. The second meeting is where he took a VR headset and put them inside like the key ideas that he had, and the project got approved. That's the power of VR. People just got it, like what he was trying to say, and he got the approval. Similarly, one of our leading customers is a Norway-based architectural firm. They're doing a public service project. They had the idea of building a large project in Oslo, where again the politicians had to understand why that project made sense. And what they did is, again, take them to the site, which had nothing was built there. And instead of showing them floor plans, they just put on the Quest, put them inside the idea, and they got completely blown away. And the project just moved very fast, and they got to approvals really quickly. So I think you can see sort of real examples where people who do not understand floor plans simply sort of get excited by it when they look at the design intent, and things move faster.
What kind of cost savings happens if you leverage SentioVR?
I think there are sort of different ways to measure it. I think one way to measure it would be, are you cutting down that design review cycle? Like, for example, instead of having, let's say, 8 to 10 weeks of meetings to figure out if this design is going to be approved, can you cut it down to like 2 meetings? And bring down that productivity benefits to up to 50%, 60% in time saving, right? So that's one way to measure. And again, you can go further down and say, hey, I did this meeting in VR, and we were able to agree upon that design decisions that we had to make in 1 hour, because the client didn't have to imagine how the house would look. So therefore, we cut down like back and forth. Different clients have different ways of measuring. Some people want like save travel time, so they just send a Quest to the client in a different city, have a collaborative meeting, and just cut down like travel required and back and forth required. So I think that's one way of measuring. Other way, very interestingly, is the emotional benefits of using VR. Clients earlier didn't have that emotional connection with the project before it started getting built, because they had nothing to sort of understand and imagine it. Now they get actually emotionally attached to the designs. They share feedback. They get happy about like, okay, this is, they get proactive about the design process, and architects need that, because that's what helps improve the projects. I think those are the two ways in which you could measure benefits of using Sentio VR.
Right. So this app works not just in the design process but also in the communication process. Are there any upcoming features that are is currently in development that you planning to put on SentioVR?
While a large majority of our customers are architects, we have realized that this problem is not just situated in the design phase. Building a project is a lot of different phases that need to happen. So what we are doing now is moving deeper into the pre-construction phase, the construction phase, and seeing what are the needs of, let's say, the engineers who are working on detailed designs. How can we help those, which is different from like showing it to clients. They're trying to work internally and trying to make like detailed designs before construction begins. So I think the features that we are working now on are what softwares are they using, the civil engineers, and trying to sort of get their needs addressed in VR. And I think the end goal of Sentio is to be the end-to-end immersive collaboration platform, right from the early design phase to like pre-construction, and once construction is complete, where people have to take care of that building, and they also need access to information, geometry, materials. So I think our goal is to sort of gradually solve the end-to-end pipeline, but today we are focused on pre-construction. That's where next set of features are getting built.
Right. What's the price point and why VR? I mean, why only VR? I mean, are you planning to also leverage
one thing for the AEC
in the pipeline?
Absolutely. I think more than sort of leading from technology, what we've learned is we have to lead from the user's needs. So we are not focused only on VR or only on AR. We have a lot of sort of cross-platform features, so people can also share designs without a headset. So I think that the goal here is to make sure you understand really well what problem you're trying to solve, and then work backwards towards the technology that solves it really well. So when it comes to mixed reality, I think now we are seeing with the Quest Pro the possibility of doing on the same headset both VR and AR use cases. So we're exploring some of that. For example, the ability to just superpose your sort of models on your real context and have a collaborative experience around that. But I think these are still early days when it comes to AR in that sense, because there are a couple of challenges also related to the construction sites, having certain safety requirements, and you just cannot sort of take the AR use cases seem to be more oriented towards the actual site where you want to have context around where it's going to get built. I think those are the challenges that today sort of stop adoption, but this is constant iteration and working out. So we are sort of figuring out when and where those use cases can be unlocked using mixed reality.
Right. What's the pricing plan?
So we're probably the only sort of product in this space that took a different approach. Rather than going after the 100 top enterprises, we just put out a free product out there and started at like $1,000 a year for our smallest plan. So most of our customers start off with $2,000 a year investments per year, and that's probably $80 a month, and from there the plan sort of can go up if you want to sort of use a lot more. For example, enterprises might have certain sort of specific needs, but I think what we've done is sort of given access to world-class software that solves these needs at a very, very sort of affordable price point, and hence we've got the adoption that we've got.
Right, really cool. Yeah, wish you the very best. So I mean, right now there's like a convergence of technologies which is happening. There's generative AI at this point in time. It's doing so many fabulous things. Text to search, text to video, text to image, and so on and so forth. So in addition to virtual reality, are there any other emerging technologies that you see having a significant impact on the AEC industry?
I mean, as you would probably see everywhere in all industries, AI is certainly something that all of us need to keep an eye on and understand how can we use all this information that's out there, especially in the AEC. There's this huge amount of data available across the life cycle of the project. So I think that's something that we are also exploring as to how can we leverage the data available to make intelligent decisions. Let's say even inside VR or AR experiences, you could probably bring out sort of use cases which are around AI. I think that's one thing to keep in mind. And I would say that would be the primary technology to keep an eye on, apart from, of course, a lot of other stuff that's going on.
acquiring a headset is still a problem. So what are the challenges that you as a startup has faced, while showcasing your solutions to these builders, and maybe talk about the opportunities also?
So it's interesting, right? When we started off, our initial hypothesis with my co-founder Amit was that, in 2 years we will be able to build a large sort of business out of VR, and this is 2017. Come 2019, and we realized this was going to be a long-term play, right? Because the headsets were still, I think 19 was a turning point, because when the Quest was launched at a $400 point with a wireless headset, good quality VR, that's when we started seeing real user traction build up. So I really consider 2019 as our year one. And I would say that headset challenge is something that year by year is getting sort of lesser of a problem. So now we have a user base to sell our product to. We do not sort of take care of headset procurement for our clients. We just build software, and we've been able to build a business where there are enough number of users out there looking for what we're trying to build with headsets. So I think that's only going to improve with time, with more headsets in the market. Price points have dropped down where businesses don't have to think twice for buying a $300-$400 headset. So that is certainly something that's out of our control, but I see that improving every year. Just probably the mindset here is that don't expect very short term huge advancements. Like hype cycles need to be avoided. It's a long-term play. Like technologies take time to mature. And the second challenge, I think, is a lot of people in the AEC industry are not very young in terms of their adoption to technology, right? So there is a friction point in people are busy, architects are busy, engineers are busy. There's a lot at stake in what they're doing, and therefore it needs to be very, very simple for them to get something to use. And I think that's the other challenge that you would face. People are not used to controllers. People are not used to like learning new technology very quickly. So how do you make it very simple, apart from the challenges in hardware, the user experience, so that people don't fall off when they're trying to figure out new stuff? So those are the two things I would say that need to be kept in mind when related to adoption.
Any advice to budding startups who want to set up something in the AEC space leveraging AR VR?
I think one advice would be avoid hype and try to be very real about why you are trying to solve this. Because my understanding is that when you try to build any business, especially in new technologies, things take time. And if you are not patient, and if your motives are not long term, you might have a really hard time seeing difficult outcomes in the short term. So just think a little bit about like why you're doing this. Is it long term? Is it a real problem you are genuinely interested in solving? Because that's going to keep you going while the hype cycles sort of go up and down, and people might have their own opinions, but you'll have very strong reasons to keep going.
Right. Yeah. It's there are a lot of people who kind of jump into the scene, seeing the hype bandwagon, but it's only the really strong ones hang around, because technology is like that. There's so many technologies which is converging, and it's if you're passionate about the goal and the service or the solution that you provide, the tech should be behind. The solution should be really up there. Chile's XR ecosystem, how's that?
I think early days it was very helpful for us to start the company in Chile. We got into Startup Chile, which is very well an accelerator now, public funded, and it helped us get a sense of how startups should be approached from early stage perspective. So I think Chile helped us at that point. Chile's XR space, I would say, is Chile is a small market, like just in terms of market size, but it is a very interesting market to test your early technologies. We use Chile as our sort of testing ground. We have very, very customers that we could sort of work very closely with, learn a lot, iterate quickly. Santiago is probably where most of the customers are. So it helped us in that sense that we didn't have to let's say travel long distances to just have one meeting. We could have 2 meetings, 3 meetings in a day, and people are genuinely interested in technology here. So I think in that sense it helped us. But I wouldn't say XR is where Chile is leading in any sense. I think you can see most of the traction coming from US, Europe. That's where I would say most of our early adopters are today.
What are your views on the metaverse?
I think this is something that will take shape in the next 5 to 10 years. I have a long-term view on this, where whether it's the headsets, whether it's the bandwidth, the internet speeds, whether it's the 3D creation and the experiences, the real-time experiences, I think all of them will come together for us to sort of go beyond what we are doing here on Zoom, to a more sort of real-time collaborative experiences. And I think then the words will have more meaning. But today, because that doesn't really exist, people have a hard time figuring out what this exactly means.
Right. Yeah. So it's an exciting space. I get excited by the word itself, though obviously, I mean, there's always like an hype cycle, we've given it different names over the period of time, for a specific business, agenda. But I think, yes, like you rightfully pointed out, I mean, we are in the initial days, and there are these platforms such as maybe your Roblox or Minecraft, which is just laying the building blocks of what this future virtual world is going to be. Because my son, who's 8 years old, he's on the comp the full day, and he's playing games, and I think more and more of the younger generation are becoming digital natives, and I think eventually we will be able to create a virtual world where all the businesses and your institutions could exist, and yes, maybe it'll have the same fidelity of as a real world, where maybe all of five senses could be part of that world. It's very,
Right.
very far off, but yes, I mean, it looks like we are going there, and once we get over there, maybe 15 years, 10, 20 years down the line, I think the entire world will look completely different, and then we will jump from the platform, which is a barrier, 2D platform, and we'll get into the 3D world, so yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And remember, Eddie, like, I remember early days at IIT, we didn't have these smartphones, right? We had those phones that was just meant to just call people. And I remember when the smartphone started to happen, it took time for everybody to jump onto, like, the app store was not ready. The phones were, really slow. They couldn't do a lot of stuff. So people had their apprehensions on mobile as well being, something that everybody will use. It took 16 years since the launch of iPhone for that to happen, and it's still happening. So I think that long-term view is going to help. But the other thing is, it just doesn't need to happen for the sake of it. I think people used phones because it solved real problems for them. I could come and live in Chile and have calls with my parents, taking away that feeling that I'm living outside India. So that was a connection that could be created using technology. And I think that same reasons would probably take people to use the metaverse platforms, because they would feel connection, they would feel collaboration in a way which is not possible today.
Exactly, and I'm glad you touched upon those points. And I mean, giving that very really cool example, I think once we have these virtual worlds, you'll be able to bring the healthcare to your home, or the education to the home. What I mean by that is that instead of like education itself it's so it's so hierarchically divided. It's only if you're of a certain class of society, you get that education. You go in the interiors, there's no education. But with the help of these technologies such as 5G, XR, Metaverse, I think the education will reach into their house, their home. They won't have to step out. All they'll need is maybe a device, like a head wearable device, which gives you the access to the world of education or healthcare, which everyone is the same, that anyone around the world gets. So yes, I think the democratization of this technology is bound to happen with these technology. Any pitch to the AEC industry that you have about Sentio VR?
Absolutely. I think the AEC industry, there are a couple of things. One is, like, people have an impression about technologies based on what they've tried, let's say 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I think the AEC industry needs to have a very open mind that this is work in progress, and therefore have the willingness to sort of try things out every time there is sort of an iteration improvement on that. I think that's one thing for the AEC industry. The second thing is, innovation brings like benefits, and I would definitely argue that companies, architecture firms, engineering firms, construction firms that adopt this early will be the winners over the long term. So it's not a question of whether I should try it or not. I think it's a question of, like, if I don't do it, I might stay behind in the long run, because others will sort of become more innovative and differentiate. So I think those are the two sort of things that I would keep in mind if I was an architecture, engineering, construction firm owner.
Right. Super. Ravi, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. I think the entire world is going to get completely impacted with these tech stack, but how do you use it, where it's human first rather than just, creating technology just for the technology's sake. I mean, we need to find that way that we create technology where we touch human lives and create solutions that helps everyone. Where do you see Sentio VR in the next 10 years? And maybe paint a picture of what the AEC industry is going to look like in the next 10 years.
So I imagine a world where, whenever there is a project that's taking shape, like something that needs to be built in the real world, I imagine a lot of that happening a lot of that's already happening in 3D, but on flat screens. I imagine all of that to move to immersive worlds. I do not see a world where, in 2030, an architect can come with, a flat sketch of, like, this is what I want to build. So I certainly see the shift gradually happening from we're building something on flat screens, flat softwares, to, like, we're building something, like, let's see it, how it looks in real human scale. So that shift is what I'm looking forward to. What that probably translates into is every professional in the world of building something is eventually going to have in his or her toolkit a headset that just becomes part of their daily decision making and workflow process. And I hope Sentio VR becomes one of the sort of key platforms that brings about this change through what we are building.
Lovely. Ravi, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. Wish you and your team the very best. And I hope that Sentio VR plays a role in the future of the AEC industry. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you, really. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Have a good time. Bye-bye.